Look, I'm in my car recording a video with my phone. I swear to Jesus, I feel like I'm one of those serial killers who like just vlogs in their car and then ends up shooting up a school or something. But on a more serious note, what are masks? We all put them on. You know, I do myself. I put on better clothes, I have sunglasses on, I do my hair, I have headphones in my ears, kind of thing. And I go into society to present myself in a certain way in which I would like to. Am I really that true person when I'm at home? The same person I am when I'm at a shopping mall? I may not be. But is that really a wrong thing to do? And I don't think so. It's not a sin. It's not a crime to do that. We want to present ourselves a certain way. Even right now, as I'm talking into the camera, I'm a YouTuber. That's my persona. Of course, it'll be different from when I'm talking to my best friends or with my family, right? But it's those people who put on crazy masks that go and hurt people. Those are the people we should be afraid of. And those are the people that we're going to talk about in today's videos. So grab a blanket, turn off your lights for 6 true scary stories of crazy people in that crazy, weird mask.
Surgical mask. This happened when I was 16 years old, during a huge ice storm in the Kansas City I grew up in. My boyfriend at the time had suggested that we go sledding, since school had been closed for the day. So, we headed over to a hill by a highway near our school to meet up with some friends, another guy, and 3 other girls who came together. While we were sledding, we noticed a large panel van pull up at the bottom of the hill, but didn't think much of it. When the snow started getting too messed up, we moved to the other side of the hill. My boyfriend and the other guy friend went down the hill, and a man got out of the van and started watching us. Now, this is already starting to get a little creepy and strange, but that feeling was intensified by the fact that this man was wearing a surgical mask. The guys decided to go talk to the man and see what was going on. In retrospect, this was a terrible idea, and we all should have just gotten out of there. So the guys asked him what he wanted, and he offered to let us warm up in his van. The guys said no, and he copped an attitude and drove off. If this all ended there, I probably wouldn't have thought much of it, but he came back and parked, left again, circled the block, and parked again. Then he got out of the van and started to approach us. At this point, we were about to head out, and the guy sent all of us ladies to the cars and headed the man off. We watched from a distance, and later this is what the guys told us the exchange consisted of. "What are you doing?" "I was just watching you." "Well, we don't like you watching us." "Yes, I do." "I didn't say you didn't like it. I said we didn't like it." "Well, I don't give a fuck." After that, the guys walked back to the cars as the man stormed back to his van. He drove by all of us on his way out. It was really unnerving, and we wouldn't let our guy friend walk home. His mom had told him he was not supposed to be in anyone's car because the ice was so bad, but we figured an icy low-speed car accident would be less harmful than getting picked up by some terrifying pervert in a van. The Man in the Pig Mask. Hi everyone. So I've been reading the subreddit for about a month now, and I figured that I may as well post the scariest encounter of my life here. Well, encounters. So my house is on the biggest chunk of property in the tri-state area, about 108 acres, and was originally kind of a park, but wasn't supposed to be used as a park. Unfortunately, people from all over didn't get the memo that we had moved in, and therefore continued to party, to hunt, and to fish whenever they felt like it. Over the years, these problems began to go away, except for a couple. Before we talk about the perpetrators, or at least the leader, we should discuss what was behind the property: an asylum, mostly housing psychopaths, schizophrenics, and those who suffered mental breaks. It isn't rare to hear random screaming for no reason coming from over there. So, back to the story. There were 4 men who kept coming back and hunting in the middle of the night. We let some people hunt in the night on Saturday nights, but for the most part, hunting was off limits. We were never able to catch these 4 middle-aged men who always wore masks. I mention that because the leader always wore a creative mask, an especially frightening one. Most of the time, he bore a pig mask. These men were sneaky, they were smart, that's what made them so scary. I had 3 encounters with them, the first being in June of last year. A few friends and I had decided to go on an adventure throughout the woods, and we discovered something frightening. We found a fortress covered in beer cans with a chair at the top. Being the teenagers we are, we decided to do the smart thing, was to destroy all the hunters' hard work by kicking the entire fortress down. Boy, had we fucked up. We later returned to that fortress to check up on it, and that's when it got scary. It was rebuilt, almost as a shrine to the last one, and spray painted on the ground was, "Try that again. We dare you." Encounter 2 happened during a simple walk at night. Sometimes when I get upset, I like to take walks throughout the woods. This time was at nighttime, and it just so happened our favorite hunters were out hunting. I was walking along minding my own business when I see the man in the pig mask and he sees me. He now knows my face. I hear a deep laugh and he turns his gun towards me. I have no idea what he was planning, but I booked it out of there ASAP, so I didn't have to figure that out. Encounter 3, in my opinion, is the most blood-curdling. It occurred only about a week ago, and I was walking home from my cousin's house in the dark. I had my flashlight shining, and I felt safe for once. But something was off. The barn lights were on. The barn lights are never on. No one ever goes into the barn. The floors are falling through. I simply brushed it off as a technical error, but then in the middle of the field, I saw the man in the pig mask, and he saw me. And his words have haunted my dreams since he yelled them at me. "You get the fuck out of here before I make you!" The way he said it still frightens me. It was so angry, so vicious, so dead set on revenge. I haven't been in the woods since then. It was later discovered that in that barn, they had been setting up shop from time to time. So, in conclusion, I just want to personally give a SO to my friend in the pig mask. Let's never ever meet again. Especially not in the woods. Clown Mask Creeper. After spending the better part of my weekend reading the stories in this fantastic subreddit, I felt obliged to share a story. This is not my story, but it happened to my friend in the summer of 2010. My friend, we'll call her Emily, was running in a park about a mile from her house. Now during the day, this park is the safest place in the world, located next to a fairly busy street, with houses surrounding it, and with a tennis court and baseball field. This park was always filled with people. Since Emily had work that day, she decided to run around dusk, when the park was fairly empty. Although this park is literally located in a neighborhood, it is downright creepy around this time, and cops can usually be seen patrolling the area, looking for drug dealers or horny teens. The trail she was running on is kind of hidden in the surrounding patch of forest, and dips behind this little hill to where the baseball field is located. As she was approaching the baseball field, she noticed a man sitting on the bench. Figuring it was just someone taking a break from a walk or something, she didn't really think anything of it. But as she approached him, is when things got weird. The guy was sitting there, wearing a clown mask. She said it looked like Pennywise from It. This obviously struck her as creepy, so she sped up from a jog to a run. A quick look over her shoulder and she saw the guy had stood up and was starting to run after her. This obviously freaked out Emily, so she just dead-on sprinted back to her house. As Emily approached her house, her other friend Stacy had just pulled into the driveway. Emily screamed at Stacy to run in the house and call the cops. By this time, the clown creeper had lost interest and was nowhere to be seen. The cops came, looked for the guy, and a report was filed. Nothing ever came of it. Emily was obviously scared out of her mind and refused to walk alone at night, and flat out avoided the park for a couple years. Now, among our friend group, we had a kind of general consensus on who it was that chased Emily. We all figured it was this kid we knew from high school who lived less than a block away from the park. We'll call him Jim. Jim was always kind of strange, was really into insane clown posse, and was just a generally creepy, albeit harmless individual. He could have been just reflecting upon the vast, majestic, sonically sexual music that is ICP, and wearing that mask was his getaway. But most likely his intentions were a little more sinister. On a side note, a couple weeks later I was driving home from a friend's house. The way I take passes Jim's house. There's also a stop sign that causes you to literally stop in front of his house. The windows were down because it was a hot night, and I slowly creeped to a stop at the stop sign. As I stopped, I looked out the passenger side window towards Jim's house, and lo and behold, sitting no farther than 5 feet from my car is Jim, looking fucked up. I mean, strung out hard on something. He looked up to me with this hazy, lost look on his face, and his mouth broke into this really strange grin. Needless to say, I hauled ass home and didn't sleep too well that night. Haven't seen or heard much about Jim since then, although I'm pretty sure he still lives in the same house. The Man in a Black Mask. I'm a longtime fan of Let's Not Meet, and I have a frightening story of my own to share with you guys. I'm in my mid-20s and consider myself to be a pretty small woman, both in height and weight. I've never taken any self-defense classes, and I would be in big trouble if someone were to attack me. At present, I live in a suburb outside of Boston, Massachusetts, with 2 other young female roommates. We live in a condo complex that has roughly 200 units, and our condo happens to be in the furthest corner of the grounds. We are the last unit in a row of 10, with woods to our left and back. The area that we live in is widely regarded as a high-crime, sketchy part of town, but I was never genuinely concerned about my safety until one night in October 2015. I had just flown back to Boston from a work trip to Tampa, Florida. My flight arrived at Logan Airport around 10:30 p.m., and between gathering my luggage and car, I didn't make it back to my apartment until midnight. I locked my car, grabbed my suitcase, and headed inside to an empty apartment. I wasn't worried about staying in the condo alone, as it was a pretty typical situation. My 2 roommates were often working late or staying with their boyfriends. As always, I locked the screen doors, then the wooden door, and felt that was enough protection from the outside world. I was greeted by my cat and went to my room. The temperature was unusually warm for October, so I opened all of my windows and crawled into bed. I should note here that, as I mentioned before, the backside of our apartment is surrounded by woods. We have a row of parking spaces directly behind us, but other than that, it's strictly forest. That particular night, I was lucky enough to find parking in the spot that lies directly beneath my bedroom window. At 3:30 a.m., I woke up to footsteps and rustling outside. I figured that it was one of the other residents either getting back from a bar or grabbing something from their vehicle, so I rolled over and tried to fall back to sleep. After about 4 to 5 minutes of loud rustling, though, I decided to check out what was going on. To my horror, a massive man wearing all black clothing and a black mask was inside the passenger door of my car, going through my glove box. I was so shocked to see someone in my car that it took me a few moments to understand what was going on. Realizing that someone had broken into my car, I immediately panicked. I have a spare apartment key taped inside of my glove box, and my apartment door was literally steps away from where he was standing. I knew that fleeing wasn't an option, as he was blocking my only exit. I also knew that if he were to use the key to get into my condo, I'd likely be in a really dangerous situation. Out of pure stupidity, I grabbed my car keys and hit the lock button, which caused my car to beep. The loud beep startled the man who was outside of my car so much that he backed up and stumbled a little on the curb. Within seconds, he looked up at my bedroom window and our eyes met. He knew that I'd seen him in my car, and to my dismay, he held my stare without flinching. I was so terrified that I backed up from the window and immediately ran into my roommate's closet. I dialed 911 and reported the situation in a really hushed whisper, fully expecting the man to break in and find me inside her room. It took the officers 12 minutes to arrive at my condo, by which time the guy had taken off and left the complex. I still don't know how he was able to get into my car that night, as I was sure that I locked it. Additionally, there were plenty of other cars in the lot that night that were much nicer than mine. Amazingly, nothing was stolen. I didn't have much in there anyways, but the scary thing was that the latch to our screen door was completely broken off. I didn't hear him trying to gain entry to my house, but I was also in a closet and on the phone with a 911 dispatcher, so who knows? All I can say is I am so lucky that I had my windows open that night and interrupted him. Otherwise, he might have used the key to get in. It goes without saying, but to the man dressed completely in black, let's not meet. White mask. I recently got into exploring abandoned places. Most of the time, me and my friends were the only ones there. A few times we ran into skaters, taggers, and the occasional junkie. A few times we had some pretty scary situations. Here are some brief descriptions of my friends. Brad, 6'6" and pretty big. Dean, he likes tagging along and trying to freak me out. Jesse, not talking shit. But dude is a ham planet. With the exception of Jesse, we are all 19. Jesse is 26. My most recent one, me and my friends, were checking out this abandoned refinery. The walk up to it was about 1.5 miles and twisted around with lots of trees and bushes on the edges of the path, which is pretty much a bike trail that's paved. Almost every 100 feet is turns and bushes makes a blind spot. After you're in the main area. We had been there a while and it got dark, but before we left, Jesse decides he wants to see the top of the water tank looking thing and starts climbing up the stairs on the side. He gets about 50 feet up and decides to turn around. Me, being the asshole I am, decided to run and kick the tank to try and scare him. When I did it, it made a loud booming sound. And then I heard something metal fall off and bang on the cement. Dean immediately yelled, "What the fuck you do that for?" and shouted at Jesse to get his fat ass down before he falls. As soon as he got down, we walked fast out the main area onto the path, which is when Jesse decides to stop and look at a friggin' sign he read earlier. At this point, it's about midnight. Me and Brad are paranoid about mountain lions and we just want to bail. This is when Dean sees a side path into the trees and bushes and says we should go check it out. I tell him to fuck off, cause I know he's gonna try to scare me, and then tell Jesse if he doesn't start walking, we're gonna leave him there. Dean and I already knew where that path takes us, because we went there earlier that week before finding this place. It connects back to the path later down and runs along the main path with about 60 feet and some bushes between them. After about 2 minutes of slow walking because of Jesse, I turn around to tell him to hurry. That is when I saw a guy in a hoodie, wearing a plain white mask, poking out from behind the last corner. I start freaking out, yelling, behind us, I saw you, fucker!" Looking back, I shouldn't have done that, because when Jesse turned around and pointed the light at where he was, which he did at the most half-ass speed ever, he was gone. The only other person who saw him was Dean, who started freaking out and told Jesse we are leaving him behind. We picked up the pace, and sure enough, Jesse ended up way behind us. We would slow occasionally to keep in sight. We're not assholes like that. After a few minutes of walking, I heard something crunching through leaves and dry grass from the other trail behind the bushes, and it was hauling ass in our direction. At this point, I'm done. I yell book it and sprint full speed ahead, while Dean and Brad run back to Jesse, who has the light. I get about a quarter mile up the path when I realized I done fucked up. Because now here I am looking at dude in a hoodie and mask, standing in the middle of the path and is staring me down. So I turn around and run back. When I get there, I see Dean, Brad, and Jesse all grouped together, not moving. After telling them about this guy ahead and deciding there was more than one, we decide we need to stay together and watch every direction. I watched front, Brad left, Dean right, and Jesse behind us. We walked as quietly as possible, keeping an ear out for anything. Me and Brad play paintball in the woods a lot, so we knew what to listen for. Every few minutes, we could hear at least 3 people walking around. One was keeping around the last corner just out of sight. The other 2 were on the other side of the bushes and trees on the other path. This kept up until the other path connected back to ours, and they ended up behind us. Up until that point, I was scared but confident they couldn't get us. If they came from the back, it was one guy, and if the other 2 made a move, we would hear them. But now, they were all in together and behind us. About 5 minutes later, Jesse blasts through us running, and I turn around to see 3 guys coming around the last corner, all wearing those plain white masks. All of them holding what looked like metal pipes. So, we all got aboard the Nope train to fuck this Ville and started running. We caught up to Jesse, who suddenly learned out to move faster than a snail and ran the rest of the path back to our cars. Jesse got in his car and peeled out, leaving immediately. Brad and Dean came in my car, which is a piece of shit which half the time won't start. This was one of those times. While I was trying to start my car, Dean and Brandon grabbed my crowbar and the tire iron and kept an eye on the gate leading to the path. After 4 times, my car finally starts and we got the fuck out of there. As we left, those guys just stood on the other side of the gate and watched us. I haven't gone back there yet. But when I do, I'm bringing more people. And each of us is gonna have a weapon. The Men in Masks. The scariest moment of my life occurred when I was age 10, male, and in 4th grade. The reason I remember that so distinctly was because the incident happened a week before my birthday, in the March of the year 2003. The clarity of the 15 minutes or so ordeal has stuck with me to this very, very day, and at the time, it really messed me up for about 5 years. After this event, I told my friend, who was immediately intrigued, and he was the one who suggested to post it in the subreddit. The day that turned into a horror story for me started off on a rather exciting note. My parents informed me that, for the first time ever, I would be staying home alone for a little while, since they were going to a party until midnight, and my younger brother, who was about 9 years old, was going to sleep over at his friend's house a few blocks away. Now, this probably doesn't sound like much, but let me tell you, to a 4th grader, that kind of independence seemed incredible. Evening comes, and I remember spending most of the time from 6 to 10 p.m. playing GameCube, without my parents enforcing their usual limits. Now, before I get into the part where the night went downhill, allow me to give some background information on where I lived. My neighborhood in southeast Michigan was filled with mostly upper and middle upper class homes, and was spread out fairly spaciously. It isn't like giant 4-acre country plots, but there is a good 100 yards in between houses, enough room for privacy, but close enough to feel like a community. I lived in a 3-level home about 4 minutes into the subdivision from a main road. So, at 10 p.m., my developing self-control told me I should probably stop playing video games and head upstairs for some rest. I brushed my teeth and decided to read in bed until I got tired. After 10 minutes of reading, the chime of the doorbell suddenly snapped me out of my peaceful state. I laid in bed for a second, and then cautiously walked out of my room. I stood on the landing of the top floor, peering down into the darkness of the main floor, and I jumped as the doorbell rang 2 times more. My young mind was racing, and I was thinking of all the possibilities. Who it could be? Was it my parents coming home early? They would have used the garage, right? Was it my brother's friend who lived next door? Well, it seemed kind of late for that. I didn't turn on the light to the stairway, but instead slowly started to descend the stairs to go to my door. My stairs are 5 feet to the left of the front door, and when I was halfway down them, I could clearly look out the decorative half circle of glass that is on top of the door. What I saw gave me one of those moments where you can feel your whole body to flush with hot blood as adrenaline kicks in and your heart rate rapidly accelerates. Facing the front door were 3 men in masks. I only glanced for a second, but they were ingrained in my memory forever. All 3 masks were grotesque Halloween style, with wiry hair sticking out in all directions on the back. In a split second, I ran back up the stairs, debating what to do. This was pre-cell phones, so I couldn't call my parents, and I foolishly thought at the time the police would be mad or wouldn't believe such a young kid dialing 911. I crept into my upstairs bathroom that was directly over the front door to get another look at the men in the mask, and I remember shaking from fear. Sense was quickly leaving me, and I mistakenly turned the lights on in the bathroom. I crawled to the blinds and I pushed one up to get a view. The 3 men were still standing there, but I also saw a 4th masked person crouched underneath a large pine tree in front of my yard, holding an object I didn't immediately recognize. Over the years, I speculated either a camera or firearm, but never knew for sure. However, in my haste, the slot of light streaming out of the window quickly caught their attention, and they gazed up at me. I'm sure my small figure was outlined by the light, and this led them to start banging on the door and beckoning me to come down. I stood there, with tears streaming down my face, me looking down at the 4 figures in masks through a gap in the blinds, them staring right back at me. Suddenly, they left the front door and went by the side of the house. I ran into my room, turning off all the lights and huddling under my desk and hiding. I could hear the motion light by the sliding glass door facing my backyard clicking on and off and on and off over the next 15 minutes. But I did not dare look outside. I braced myself to hear pounding on the downstairs back windows, and at any moment it felt like I would hear glass shattering and them barging in. Crying, shivering, not feeling safe inside my own house had to be some of the worst 15 minutes of my life, especially at such a young age. Thankfully, after a while, the motion lights shut off for good. There was no trace of them. My parents came home to me wedged in between the wall and the bed in the guest room, eyes wide with fear. I told them what happened, and my dad explained to me there wasn't really any evidence or anything for the police to track. For a few years, I became super protective of my brother and wouldn't let him go outside or alone for fear of the masked men. I thankfully never had any other encounters, but it still messed me up pretty bad for quite a while, as stated above. I enjoy this subreddit and almost a masochist, definitely a willingness or tendency to subject oneself to unpleasant or trying experience for pleasure type fashion because of that moment in my life. I hope you all like the retelling. Thanks for reading.